Hi, I originally thought about doing this with green screen, but we all know how great my green screen is, or maybe a film at a real control tower. But then I thought that airport security wouldn't be too happy about that. After all, we live in a world where security exists, so we're still up against the wall. Or in front of it, better to say. The game itself plops you in the seat of an air traffic controller, and ultimately your goal is to work at John F. Kennedy Airport in New York City, though you're not necessarily working the Kennedy approach. RetroKork. Like I mentioned right at the start, the game puts you in the position of an air traffic controller, for multiple airports actually, with the ultimate goal being that you work at JFK, which I believe to be one of the busiest airspaces in the world, if not the busiest, due to the vicinity of DC and all the tourists coming in. And since this is a game from the past, you'll encounter planes that now are no longer active. Specifically, you'll encounter the Concorde. Now, the appearance on your air traffic controller screen is in pseudo 3D, with the airplanes being visibly headed the direction they're going. Every dot on the screen represents 1 mile, and every bar under the aircraft represents 1,000 feet. The aircraft you'll encounter are basically 3 kinds. You'll encounter light aircraft, then there are commercial jet airliners, and of course you'll encounter the Concorde. And you'll have to take care of all of these planes, plus you'll have to deal with certain hazards in some of the levels, so that you need to keep in mind. Though some of the levels are quite easy, like, well, your shift in Atlanta, Georgia, where you only deal with commercial airliners on a day with pretty good weather condition, and there are no elevation hazards, so there are no mountains. Bad weather and mountains, well, they are your nightmare over at Stapleton International Airport in Denver, Colorado. Now, if you go to Dallas, Fort Worth, there you'll have to deal with both commercial and light airplanes, plus the density of traffic is relatively high, though at least the ground is flat and there seems to be no cloud in sight. The next level is DC, which has a no-fly zone, where you're not allowed to send aircraft unless you want them to get into trouble. There are 2 airports that you need to handle, namely Dulles International and Washington International Airport. Plus, you get all of the lovely aircraft to deal with. And ultimately, like I said, New York, well, you cover both JFK and LaGuardia. You get all sorts of planes, you have an even tighter schedule for the planes, and, well, if the reviews on the internet are any indication, this is the level where you'll tear your hair out. You might tear your heart out, but still. I forgot to mention something. A light aircraft travels at 2 miles a minute. A commercial airliner is twice as fast and crosses 4 miles a minute. And the Concorde goes 8 miles a minute. The turn radius of all 3 aircraft is 1.5 miles, and they can all descend and climb 1,000 feet per mile. You need to keep a separation of 3 miles between planes if they're on the same flight level. You can get below that down to 1 if they are at least 1,000 feet apart in height, and they can fly over each other, I believe, with 2,000 feet. But don't quote me on that. But there are so-called fixes along the traffic routes that planes go along. These traffic routes are pretty much like a network of highways though some of them are apparently one-way streets. It's really difficult, and I don't know how to file a flight plan anyway. Well, as far as I know, these fixes were the so-called handoff to the next operator, or if you're going over the ocean, well, you're leaving controlled airspace. Now, these fixes, they have specific heights as far as I know, where the transition from one area to the next is supposed to happen. Now, the good thing is you don't have to deal with these people on a talking basis, though the game, it contains voice synthesis done by the same guys who, for example, did the same thing for the Impossible Mission game. The guys at ESS. And, well, that's all I can tell you about Kennedy Approach. The game, not the position at John F. Kennedy Airport, New York City. Two weeks from now on, we'll take a look at two game adaptations of one movie, two licensed games, both of them called Aliens, the computer game. Well, technically there are the computer games,